you guys generally look at each position and basically say, okay, Oklahoma's after, they're generally after these two guys, these three guys, these four guys, defensive line, linebacker, secondary, go through the whole unit, position by position, both sides of the ball, and say, they're not going to get all these guys. They're just competing against too many great schools, but they
Right.
really need to get one of those three. They really need to get, two out of those four or whatever, to make this a good class and a balanced class where they're not, okay, they got their two top targets at linebacker, but defensive line, they had to go down to, they missed on all four, and then they were just going for whoever they could pick up at that point. So do you guys have any, besides the obvious going to the top of the star rankings and saying, A, B, and C,
Right.
do you guys have any key linchpins in this recruiting class?
I would say defensive line is a big one in the names that Jason has mentioned here. When you talk about David Stone, Nwunari, Nigel Smith, Joseph Jonah, and John Yates, I think those are the four. Now, are they going to get all four? I mean, probably not. If they were to get all four, I think they're in a good position to all four.
Ooh,
but
I think they are too. I think that
it's the best defensive lineman class that they've ever had, right?
So if they get two of those four, is that success?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
David Stone's a must. It's a must. They got to get him. I think with him being an Oklahoma guy or Oklahoma kid, with him showing as much interest as he's had over the years, I think they have to get him. I would be surprised if they didn't. Honestly, I would too. I would be floored if they didn't. Now, I mean, some of the other ones, I think Oklahoma's in a really, really good spot for Jonah. I think he's been trending this way for quite some time. Now the other one, Nwunari and Nigel Smith, I think we're in a good spot, but I think we're in a much better spot for the other two that I mentioned. I think cornerback is going to be another position that's going to be, or just secondary, just in general, I should say, is going to be another position of need. We're talking mostly about defense. Wide receiver is going to be something that I think they're continuing to look at. I think, unfortunately, the Wesco kid seems to be trending in kind of the opposite direction right now. Looks to be more of a TCU guy. Still wish we could have got Malcolm Kelly to come over for that wide receiver spot. But I think, defensive line I think is number one, but I think there's some other spots, secondary and then the wide receiver position as well.
Well, I think obviously with the receiver part that you were talking about, and then when you have Keon Brown, obviously came up as looks like he's ineligible to be able to go to OU this season. He's going to be enrolling at Garden City Community College. Looks like he's going to be good for, if he can get it together, get his grades right in 1 year, he should be able to go to OU. After that, looks like, to me, it seems like OU maybe planted in there, a little bit. Obviously, there's plenty of places in between here in Tallahassee, Florida, that he could have went and played football and stayed close to that. As far as the Nwunari stuff, and then I still think that he's got a former teammate that's at OU already in Green, the offensive lineman. I think there's still a really good chance there. As far as what I've seen, you still got crystal balls for him here to Oklahoma. Whether or not you get him or not, I'm kind of with what you said a second ago, Mark, was that if you get two of these guys, you're in great shape. The chances are you could get three. 4 is going to be, I would tend to doubt that. I just don't think that there's going to be that much money. And I really think that that's what happened with Zadavian. I think that he got more offered to him through Oregon because they needed to make a splash there too. They haven't hit on a lot of these guys that they've been wanting to hit on, aside from Uyunglele, last season. They missed a lot. They were close on Peyton Bowen. I think that they maybe overbid on that. And I honestly feel like you may have a couple of those guys in their back pocket already, knowing that. And so they're definitely not going to get into that. They're not going to get into that bidding war. But yes, you're right on the money, Jason. As far as the D line, that is where they got to be at. whether it's defensive end, and defensive end, I think they did pretty well. They got one high 3-star kid at the end of the last cycle that I think everybody's pretty high on. Aside from that, defensive tackle wise, they had to fill through the portal. It's definitely and that's definitely one of the bigger problems that they had on defense was getting pressure on the quarterback, collapsing that pocket. It was something that you saw them do very well in the spring game. The offense had to work for theirs in the spring game. So it was good to see that with Rondell Bothroyd, and obviously everybody is loving Deshaun McCullough. But I do feel like that's definitely the biggest place that they need to go. Cornerback, obviously, the secondary is another thing that you want big. And then that receiver room, if with the Keon Brown thing, I could see them probably going and grabbing up somebody through the portal maybe to fill in this year. But it may have given, a couple of these guys that you kind of could have seen maybe on their way out. And in that receiver room, maybe getting another opportunity there. Because it's just a bunch of unprovens, right, Jason? I mean, just kind of unproven in that. I think that there's a lot of talent there, but none of them have really stepped up and shown that they are that number one guy yet. So
no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that's the biggest. I think across the board, in a lot of ways, Oklahoma has a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, but it's a lot of unproven talent. I mean, I think you can name your position group and just have the same theme across the board, whether it's offensively, defensively, wherever, any spot. I think probably outside of your starting quarterback, right? I mean, you've got a running back room of guys that looked pretty decent last year, but they haven't been the main guys, right? Wide receivers the same area, and then particularly to your point, Jason, on the defensive side of the ball, and linebacker. I mean, is linebacker to a certain degree. We've seen.
It seems like they filled that out pretty well, but we'll see.
I think defensive line and secondary are areas that either it's new talent coming into the program, or you've got some key transfers that are going to have to play in a really solid way this year.
Yeah, and with Jimmy, I think you're right. I think Pettaway, I mean, he ran a 10.2 apparently this season in track. And if you look at I saw a picture of him after one of those track meets. The guy looked like a freaking linebacker. And so this is a kid with a lot of speed. I think that, between him and Anthony Evans, I'll take this guy all day because, I mean, he's just a big, big guy. And he's got that take the top off speed as well. I think Jaden Gibson, I mean, he's had the drops. Obviously, we've talked about that a lot on my show, that this kid, but I think he may have benefited from this with Keon. And I still think Keon's going to have an opportunity. You've had a lot of people that have kind of compared him body size wise to like CeeDee Lamb and stuff like that. Now that's a big comparison, but just looking at him, I can see what they're talking about. He's going to have to get those grades right. I think if he does that, and this is where I've been kind of going back to it, is you have a situation where he's got an opportunity to still go to Oklahoma, and he was really high on. And I mean, once he stuck. He was there. You haven't heard anything about him even waffling at all. Obviously, being in Florida State land, they were all over him, and he's never wavered. So I think that Oklahoma is going to try to stick it out with him as well. He's going to have to do his side of it. But if you turn around and look at the other side, you had Laney Jenkins. He was a 6'7", 290-pound edge rusher from Butler Community College. He had committed to Oklahoma and then decided to take a visit to Illinois, and they pulled the scholarship from him because of this. The whole thing is, this is where Venables is at. He believes that if you're going to make that commitment, then make it. If not, don't. So they take a spot off the board if you commit. So they're taking that spot off the board, and now you're still out there shopping. That's just kind of where they're at on it. So that's where I kind of feel like if you look at both sides of that, you look at Keon Brown, they could have easily walked from that and been like, look, he's not getting it done in the classroom. We don't want to deal with this. But because that relationship was there, and he had shown that he was, not taking visits. He wasn't doing all that other stuff the whole entire time. He's just maybe struggling with something in a class or something.